be resistance. The next battle will always be near. As long as you have everything, there will be those who have nothing to fear. And little by little, or maybe all at once, you will lose. Because our future is not yours to choose.
Welcome to Voices of Resistance. You are listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
The viewpoints in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or the staff.
I'm Barbara Humphrey.
And I'm Albert Strickland.
Co-hosts of today's show. Voices of Resistance is a project of the Savannah Justice and Peace Collective. We give voice to resistors who have no voice in mainstream media and present a wide range of issues that affect us all.
But there will always be resistance. The next battle will always be near. As long as you have everything, there will be those who have nothing to fear. Because our future is not yours to choose.
So welcome to Voices of Resistance. Today, on the anniversary of the UN adoption of the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of Their Families, we are going to be discussing immigration. Primarily, we're going to be talking about the system here in the U.S., the broken system, and the people who are victims of that system. So I'm Barbara.
I'm Albert.
And we have two guests in the studio today with us who are going to introduce themselves.
Okay. Hello, my name is Daniela Rodriguez.
Hello, my name is Ernesto Estrada.
Thank you. And we'll be hearing a lot more from both of these individuals who are members of the Savannah Undocumented Youth Association. I'm going to start... Alliance, I'm sorry. I'm going to start with a quote from Karl Marx. And this is a quote that I think is somewhat relevant to our conversation today. Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances existing already, given and transmitted from the past. The tradition of all dead generations weigh like a nightmare on the brains of the living.
So today, actually, we're commemorating the anniversary of the UN adoption of the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Immigrant Workers and Members of Their Families. And we're going to be discussing immigration today and all its variable loopholes and miseries. But the migration of people across national borders, immigrating from one country and immigrating into another, is what we're seeing ever increasing every day.
And we're going to start with a truth that we may or may not embellish and discuss more, and that is that no human is illegal. From this comes the fact that if no human is illegal, then we are all legal inhabiting the land we are in and free to move about.
In fact, all of us are immigrants for the most part. Very few are not. The indigenous people being one exception. Got more. So, we're all immigrants, and we should be treating everyone with the dignity and respect that we demand also.
That's right. And while we can say that we're all immigrants, we also know that we're all political prisoners of a system that requires permission to move about freely. We're economic prisoners of a system when we lack the economic means to move around freely. Sadly, as we go back to that quote from Karl Marx, the history of our immigration system here in the U.S. has been one that has mostly been based upon political exploitation and economic greed. While we look today at the current president, and I know I'm constantly reading and hearing about the cruel things that he's proposing, the executive orders that he's proposing for immigration, the Obama executive orders that he has refused to continue, I think it's important for us to realize that this current administration embodies the and what he has done embodies what it is we have always done. They are cruel. Indeed, we know that they are very cruel and very harsh. Yet, they do continue both the larger historical context of U.S. immigration policy and the smaller scope of the recent past. They fall well within the boundaries of America's deep-seated nativist traditions.
One of the things that we've always done, and actually from the beginning, we have used people for our own economic greed. Bob mentioned greed. That's a big factor in all of this. When we have, I guess I've got to push on the button, right? I'll get it in a moment. We've always used people from different, whether they were Irish or Chinese or the migrant workers that come through to pick all the fruits and things in the Southwest and in Florida. We've always used people and abused them terribly. Some of the incidents that have happened are horrendous. I mean, you would not expect that kind of treatment from civilized people. But when it comes to money, I guess civilization often goes out the window, or civilized nature, when we see that dollar everywhere. So we mistreat immigrants. We allow them in when we need them. When I mean we, as of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s probably, we allow certain numbers in, and if we need certain people, we will allow more in. We'll cut back on others. But the thing is, much of the immigrants that are coming to this country are becoming because of acts that the U.S. has committed, whether it's through the raping of the South America with the companies, whether it's the fruit companies or the mining companies or the tree companies, and displacing people from their land, pushing them farther into cities that no longer can sustain people. So their alternative is you either starve to death or you look for some kind of help somewhere, and we seem to be the one that everyone thinks has the most and the most money. And so they come here and you can work, feed your family.
From this tradition, from these policies, from these perceptions, clearly there is more demand to come into this country than this country is willing to make offers. And as I mentioned, Trump isn't the first chief executive to tap into our tradition, our nativist traditions. His policies haven't sprung from thin air. From the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798 to the Chinese Expulsion Act of 1882, the Red Scares of the 20th century, Operation Wetback, which was mass deportations during the Eisenhower administration, the deportation records set by President Obama. Our immigration laws and policies, in good measure, have been driven by political expediency, paranoia, scapegoating, racism, and exploitation. What they have not been driven by is humanitarianism.
Well, basically, it is racism and it is American exceptionalism. We are the best. There's no one else in this world, and everyone else must bow to us. And that's essentially what the exceptionalism means to me. We're the greatest. We're not the greatest. We're not the freest. And the world doesn't hate us for our freedom. We need to be doing a lot more in the world to settle people, to work with people, to work with, I don't like that either countries, but if you have a country, we need to work together.
That's true. What many people may or may not realize is that because of the activities of the U.S. around the world, because of the very restricted ways that people can enter this country legally, we have a significantly large population of people who are undocumented. And these are people who are in this country, and not all of them entered the country illegally, but whether they entered illegally or they have found themselves here without a documented status, they are here. And it's time we face that situation and we deal with it. We deal with it from our humanity, not necessarily from our political expediency and our greed. We decided to find the quote from the Statue of Liberty. We talked a little bit about the Statue of Liberty. Some of us, our ancestors, came into this country through Ellis Island, and the Statue of Liberty was one of the first things they saw as they entered New York Harbor. And basically what the statue tells us is, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
We know that certainly doesn't exist today. And my family didn't come through Ellis Island. We actually came across the border and into this country, and I might say illegally. And that was because there was no Ellis Island at the time. We came in the 1830s, 1840s. So there was no Ellis Island. It was a better time. And the solution to a lot of this is to go back to that time, before we had Ellis Islands and all these controls, controlling the flow of people across the earth. Yeah.
Controlling the crossing of people into this country. So 11 million undocumented persons living in the United States at this time, although of course that number is an estimate because people aren't exactly stepping forward saying, here I am, count me. And a lot of people coming in to get away from political turmoil, from starvation, from oppressive conditions, and also because sadly there is a belief in the world that America is the land of opportunity. And I want to hear from our guests now to talk about a little bit about their experiences. Would you like to talk a little bit about your situations and as it relates to our conversation?
What caused you to actually start the organization, to sue you?
Well,
Sue you?
You can talk up into the microphone.
we realized there was nothing going on in Savannah. When Suya was founded in 2013, a lot of my friends and I, we saw that nothing was happening. Everything was going on in Atlanta, so we wanted to do something more local. We wanted people from the community to know that we were in the community too, as undocumented, as people with DACA. We wanted them to know that we were here, that they could help. Because many times when people they hear about what's going on with DACA, where undocumented immigrants, they think that's far from home. So we wanted them to know that we were here, that we were in the community, that we were their friends, we were their neighbors. So we just wanted to create for them to know that we were also here and that we needed their help.
Now, you mentioned DACA. What is DACA?
DACA was an executive order passed by President Obama. What it did, it stands for Deferred Action. What it did is it gave hope to a lot of kids who came to the U.S. when they were little. So DACA gives a work permit, a social security, and also a driver's license.
Okay. And DACA is actually Deferred Act for Childhood Arrivals.
Yes.
And it has a companion deferred action for parents of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents. And it enabled people who were in this country, if they met the criteria of one of those two programs, to step forward to register. And they were given a 2-year deferment from deportation, and they would be able to work, get a driver's license, et cetera, come above ground and be part of U.S. society, but just for 2 years. So talk a little bit about what that meant and what people can do as the 2 years begins to expire, or could do.
So something that I feel like people don't really know is that in order to get DACA or deferred action, people had to pay $495, so it was not free. And it was every 2 years. You could renew it. However, recently President Trump decided to end deferred action. So if you wanted to apply for the first time, you cannot anymore. Or if you wanted to renew, you cannot. Currently, there are many people who are losing DACA every day. Their DACA keeps expiring. from the lucky ones, they have 2 years. Their DACA could expire in 2019. However, there are people who are not so lucky, and it will expire in a few days or in a few months. Knowing that you created your life thanks to DACA, that you were able to make your own business, to start your own family, to provide for them, and now DACA, it's going to be taking away. It's like they taking away all the opportunities that you had created for yourself.
So what do you think people are going to do once their DACA deferment expires?
A lot of people are losing hope now that their DACA is about to expire, especially if they are in college. They don't know what's going to happen after they're done with their degree.
Right.
They don't know if they're going to go back and be under the shadows again. They don't know what's going to happen, because especially now, since they decided to apply for DACA, immigration has all their information. They have their home address, they have their phone numbers. So they are under risk. It's like living with no hope, not knowing what's going to happen next.
And I think it's important to point out, when we think about immigration, when we think about undocumented people, the image, I'm sure, that conjures up in our mind are the people coming from Mexico, swimming across the Rio Grande, going across miles of desert, and that is clearly, that is one path to the U.S., but it is not the only path. So many people came here as children with parents, and for whatever reason, either overstayed a work permit, overstayed a student visa, just really had nothing to go back to. Some people came because they came from countries where there was an awful lot of turmoil. I have a friend who's been in the United States for 20-some years, came from Senegal. I think he was 8. So for him to think about going back to Senegal is kind of a non-issue. He doesn't know the language. He doesn't know the culture. He is an American from living here for so long, from culture, language, etc. Yet his life is on hold. He did not qualify for DACA. He kind of lives an underground existence. He can't work legally. He gets jobs. He relies on friends for places to stay, and it's a very hard existence. And I know I've talked to him. I read his Facebook posts. It can create a great deal of depression in people who feel they have no hope and no place to go. So are you meeting some of these people here in Savannah? Are you talking to them? Are you sort of giving them some kind of counsel, or you are a support group together?
We are a support group together because there's nothing that we can say that's going to help a person who's going through depression right now because of something that we have no control over. We can only help. So you just tell them, you're not alone. There's 11 million more people like you. They won't just take you one day. In order for them to take you, they're going to have to take all of us. So there's 11 million of us. They can't just take everyone.
Right, and we have said that a lot. Ernesto, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, and
Pull the microphone over.
okay. And I think our experience as college students, we've been in college, I think, for this is our 5th year, has helped us a lot see in the student community what students go through when they are undocumented or have this permit, DACA, but there's just no hope of being able to work or graduating, but then Trump administration comes and gets rid of this program, and then where do you go there from? Where do you go from there? So I think this has been able to help us make this organization to help not just students like us, but help our community and be able to bring awareness. I think that's our main objective, is bring awareness. There's lots of ignorance around the subject. Lots of ignorance around even the subject of just like immigrants coming into this country.
Absolutely.
My ancestors, of course, went through that. Being Irish, we were kind of no Irish need apply, and if we've got the dirtiest job to do, we'll get an Irishman to do it because he'll do it for almost nothing just to survive.
Yeah.
And that's almost 200 years ago. So not much has changed in that scope as far as our quality of life and for people.
Right, and my ancestors, it was about 120 years ago. They came in as immigrants from various places in Europe, mostly from a Jewish background, so they had experienced years of oppression and turmoil, and what greeted them in this country were tenements on the Lower East Side, and not exactly welcomed with open arms. Sometimes I think the Statue of Liberty was a present from the French to mock us, because as I think about those words, I'm not sure they were ever really true.
We were talking today, and I think it's something that perhaps we should consider putting in a museum somewhere until we can actually read those words and mean them on there. It's supposed to be a beacon for anyone who needs help, anyone who needs refuge, anyone who wants to better their life. We're here. Well, it's everything but that now. If you've got money, you can come in. If you've got a skill, like you're a brain surgeon, you can come in. But if you're an ordinary man trying to feed your family, or an ordinary woman trying to survive and feed her family, it's almost impossible to get in.
Right.
The people who need it the most are the ones who generally can't get in.
Yes, that is exactly the point. When a lot of people like to assume that we just cross the border or come illegally just because we want to. No, we come here for a reason.
Right.
And yes, a lot of people try to come legally, but the process is very hard. In order for you to come legally, you have to have money in your bank account. Otherwise, they won't even consider you to give you a work permit. So, of course, everyone wants, ideally, everyone would love to come here legally. Nobody wants, as a mother, I'm sure, even my mother, she wouldn't want her 13-year-old daughter to just cross the border with her and put her on the risk of rape or many other risks.
Absolutely.
So, but that was the only option, because when you're running out of resources, of no food, and then if you see a better life, then you take it. You take the opportunity.
That's
Any
right.
person would.
Yes.
If you need to feed a family, you're going to find a way to do that.
Yeah, it's a survival.
Or yourself, even.
That's right.
Survival.
That's right.
I don't think anyone really wants to leave their family and their friends
Their
to
homeland.
go anywhere, whether it's Syria, Mexico, Canada. Some of us want to by choice. I'd like to, but it's beside the point. But we should have that right. It should be a human right, and that's what the UN was saying. This is a human right, and immigrants, no matter where you are, who you are, you deserve the treatment and respect of being a human being, not being something to be used, tossed, and thrown away. And that's generally what we do.
Or only valued because of how much money you have in the bank. And Ernesto, you were telling me earlier that one of the ways somebody can come into this country is to invest in an American business. How much money did you think the person needed?
Yeah, it was close to $1 million to.
Okay, close to $1 million.
Yeah.
That's not exactly the tired, poor, huddled masses that Lady Liberty speaks about.
In fact, if I had that, I don't know if we'd even need to come here, So
That's right.
why would you?
Then you wouldn't. And then, of course, again, the sad thing is you get here and you realize, for the most part, you're not welcomed. You're facing potential deportation if you don't have a legal status, or your legal status expires. And that's quite a frightening thing. I can't imagine constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who's following me, who's watching me, who's surveilling me, particularly in this time when surveillance is through cell phones and computers is relatively easy to do.
Yes, as I believe social media right now is a target as well.
Yep.
Under the Trump administration, I believe social media is now a target, which back then it wasn't even looked at as something to look at people, but now it's a tool.
Right.
It's a tool for them.
That's right. So if people are looking for support from other people or looking for assistance, you probably have to think twice before you use social media as your way to do that, or talk in code, or do the kinds of things that can keep you from being identified and targeted.
Yes, expose yourself like that.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was back in 2003 or 2004, I dropped my son off in college or went to visit him, and he was in college about 20, 30 miles from the Canadian border. And as I was driving up there, I remember seeing something on the other side of the road, thinking, oh, maybe it was an accident and after I came back the other way, it was an ICE Border Patrol checkpoint. And this was 80 or 90 miles south of the Canadian border, where they were stopping the cars. They were asking people, were they citizens? It's so long ago I can't remember if they were asking for driver's licenses. And I'm kind of feeling that probably once you were stopped, they had your plate. They were running your plate through the system to make sure the car was legal and whatever. And I'm a little ashamed of myself now because I watched a video yesterday about knowing your rights, and I played right along with them when in fact I could have just put my hand up and said, no, I'm not answering any of your questions.
I think that's an important part. Something that you brought up earlier, too, was the fact of the information, that we're not aware of our rights at all. And you had a program where you actually distributed rights, people to know their rights?
Yes, in the beginning of the year, immigration was being heavy in Savannah. We heard that a lot of immigration went to the Hispanic community because, of course, I guess they assume that Hispanics are the ones who will most likely be undocumented. They forget there are other groups that are also undocumented. Right. Yes. So, if ICE comes to your house, you don't have to open the door. But a lot of people don't know that. So they open the door and then they answer questions. And then by the time they get a lawyer, it's kind of late to defend their case.
Right.
So with Suya, we did canvassing, which was we decided to go door to door and distribute information about knowing your rights. So in case immigration were to come, they can just pass the paper under the door and tell them, I know my rights. I don't have to open the door for you, which is, of course, that's not always like something that's going to keep you safe because immigration can also get aggressive and then kick your door and get through your door one way or another.
Yeah, we have talked about that too, about exercising your rights, but exercising your rights with common sense, that there are certain people and certain groups of people, if they speak up, if they refuse in order to show their driver's license, pull off to the side of the road, that in many cases has been a death sentence for people.
Yes. So it is very important to know that even if you're undocumented in this country, you have rights. You have the basic human rights. And then one of them is to keep silent. You don't have to, no matter how aggressive they get to you, how close they get to your face, or they scream at you, you don't have to say anything until you get a lawyer.
Okay.
The important thing, too, is to remember to ask the questions about, do you have a warrant?
Yes.
You're not coming in without a warrant. I don't care who you are, And also, if they stop you on the street, are you being detained or are you being arrested? That changes things. And they have to tell you and give you reason. So those are part of knowing your rights that can protect you at time.
Yes, that is very important.
Yes.
So we're going to take a short break from this conversation so we can identify the station. You are listening to Voices of Resistance on WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Brighter Day Natural Foods, offering produce, vitamins, and supplements, and a deli and juice bar. Brighter Day is located at 1102 Bull Street at the south end of Forsyth Park. More information available at 912-236-4703 or brighterdayfoods.com.
If you enjoy our programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. As an individual, you can give any amount, become a basic station member, or become a serious fan of the station. To check out membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP.
Okay, well, thank you for staying with us. This is Voices of Resistance on WRUU FM. And we're here in the studio. I'm Barbara.
I'm Albert.
And we have two guests with us today.
Daniela?
And Ernesto.
Thank
And
you
you're
very-
from what organization? We need to get that out of the way. Start with.
Oh, yes. So we are members from SUYA, which stands for Savannah Undocumented Youth Alliance.
And we talked with Daniela and Ernesto before the show, and both of you are undocumented. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you came into the country and how you're surviving, how you're holding on, and
Yes. So I came to the country when I was 13. I crossed the border illegally. And from there, I remember that I came through Texas, I believe. This was a long time.
yeah,
So I do know that I was 13. So I wasn't like a small kid anymore. So I knew that what I was doing was wrong. But I also knew that it had to be done. I knew there will be consequences, but I didn't know how big the consequences will be. Like, I knew that I could be taken away from the group, not also because I was undocumented, but also because I was a young female. So of course, like, I have more risks, and I just never could have imagined the risks that I was putting myself into when I came to the country undocumented. And then not also that, but also once you finally come to the U.S. and then establish yourself, like, learning English is really hard. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I came to Georgia, the level of English that I knew was just the colors were like numbers, like 1 through 10, and then I was put into a 7th grade social studies class. Right, I had no idea what was going on. So yes, coming to the U.S. undocumented, it's not only, but as an immigrant, it's not only like the risk that you are putting yourself into, but also just like the change. It's
Right.
like just very big, like a different language, a different system. Everything is very different.
and you came with your mother.
Yes.
Okay. And Ernesto, tell us your story?
Yes, I crossed the border when I was 6. So this was back in December of around 2000. I remember it was like snowing really hard. I arrived in Atlanta,
Okay.
and it was like snowing really hard. So that was like different for me, seeing snow for like the first time.
That was the first time you saw snow?
Yeah, and especially that much snow. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I've lived in Atlanta for around 10, 11 years, and I moved from Atlanta to here, Savannah, to go to school. So I've lived here for 4 or 5 years now,
Okay.
and yes.
Yeah. So, but for our broken immigration system, you would both consider yourselves Americans. You have been here for a very long time. Would you say that is sort of true? Kind of?
Kind of, yes. Well, maybe for Ernesto it's different just because he came when he was like little.
Very young.
Yeah, very young. But I came kind of like in the middle, so it's only been 10 years since I came to the U.S. Even though I was able to learn English pretty quick, it took me, I want to say 2 years until I decided that my mom had taken like the best decision. Just because the first 2 years I remember I was very depressed. I couldn't fully speak English. It was really hard. But now even like when I try to speak fully Spanish, especially what I learned in school, I can't fully translate it just because I don't know. Like, if I'm talking about biology, I don't know the biology terms in Spanish.
Right.
So it's not just like yes, I'm bilingual, but that doesn't mean that I know like every word. So just like if one day immigration were to take me back to my home country, which is Mexico, I would be probably in shock because it's been such a long time.
It's been a long time.
A very, very
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
there's another point here, that it's actually now it's on. Well, okay. It's actually the idea of American, and this is just a point that bothers me. I just have to say it. We're Americans, as though Mexico is not,
Right.
Or Canada is not. It's one continent. It's the American continent, not the country.
Right.
But we divide it that way, and it seems a put down. We are Americans, and then we have these second class, third class, fourth class nations around us, like Mexico and Canada. But they're equally as American as we are, if not.
Yep.
So
That is very true. That is very true.
it's just a mindset.
Before there was DACA, there was a proposal, there was legislation that, of course, was never passed, and it was called the DREAM Act, Development Relief Education Act for Alien Minors Act. DREAM Act, and you sometimes will listen to people refer to themselves as dreamers. They fit the qualifications for the DREAM Act, and that was really much more of a path towards citizenship, as opposed to DACA, which is really kind of a 2-year deferral on deportation, and you hope as the 2 years would expire, it would be renewed, and now there's absolutely no hope for that. So I understand there's a new bill in Congress to a new DREAM Act that has been proposed.
Yes, there's currently the House Bill 3440, or also called the DREAM Act 2017, which it would not only benefit people who have DACA, but also will include others, like me. So yes, it's like that's hope for us. But currently, it's still like they're only talking about it, they're only negotiating about it. So we really don't know.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
We can only hope for the best.
Yeah, and 2018 will be a congressional election year. 1/3 of the House of Representatives, 1/3 of the Senate, and every member of the House of Representatives will be up for election. So we can only imagine how, depending upon the economic and political conditions in this country, which right now are not very favorable to being very supportive of saying to 11 million people, let's just put this all down and you're citizens. But, I'm one of those people who think it's intentionally that way, that we're intentionally creating an economic situation that there's theoretically more people than jobs, and there are people who are disposable. And sadly, I feel undocumented people are being kind of put in that category.
Yes, right now, especially with DACA, the only people who can currently obtain DACA or were able to obtain DACA were the ones who had a high school diploma or like a college diploma. Not everyone can get it. Mm-hmm. So they take priority in the ones who are educated, which in a way it is also unfair for undocumented immigrants who do the other jobs.
Absolutely. I don't think there's much of a sense in this country about how much work people do, how much work undocumented people do. And I had read, I'm sure it wasn't in Savannah, but somewhere, maybe New York City, maybe one of the larger cities, where there was a call for a general strike for every undocumented person to call in sick, to not go to work. And the reality is there were restaurants that would have to close down for the day. There were all sorts of things that could not happen if that were to happen. And, of course, people would put themselves at great risk of doing that, but it would certainly bring the point home that this country, the wheels grind on the backs of all of us. We all keep the wheels going.
Of course, and like right now what President Trump keeps saying is that America is not great, but you can see that immigrants make America great. Like, we help it make it better, and he wants to kick us out, and he doesn't see the point of how much we can contribute to this country. It's not only in the fact that how much we can contribute, but also in the fact that the human side.
Right.
He calls himself a Christian, then many Christians who think that illegal wetbacks shouldn't come to this country. Well, you said Christian, you should have a human side. You should think that if you have a big table, you should share the table. You should share your food, the resources that you have. If you have in excess, you should give it to the ones that have nothing.
That's right.
There's a whole chapter in the Bible on that. Matthew somewhere where it says you're supposed to feed the hungry, feed the poor, you're supposed to visit the people in prison. These are what Christians are supposed to do. But now it's too easy to do nothing. You can sit and watch your neighbor in hunger and someone in need. I don't care if you're documented, undocumented, whatever. You know, that you're, as a Christian, supposedly, it's supposed to be that's your responsibility to take care of that person. And that is not being done.
No.
And also room for opportunity, which I think right now is what they don't want to give to us. They don't want to give us opportunity to grow. Something that I always mention with Suya whenever we present is that I feel attacked that just because of the color of my skin, that I'm a brown woman, that I can only clean houses, I can only cook, I can only be a babysitter, I cannot be a lawyer, I cannot be a doctor. I think that is unfair. I think that I should also be given an opportunity to provide what I can give.
Everyone should be, you're right.
That's right.
100%.
And definitely, corporations have a big part, a big say in our politics of this country. The amount of money they're saving by paying contractors, subcontractors, that who knows who they're hiring. They're most likely hiring illegals. And the amount of money they're saving by keeping these people in the shadows is just a great amount of money. It's just the way they're functioning right now.
Well,
And it benefits them like in a great way.
I've heard a lot of the horror stories of like Smithfield and those companies that actually sent buses to Mexico, brought people back, worked them for 3 or 4 months, and then turned them into ICE so they can bring in new ones.
Sometimes they don't even pay them.
I know.
That's right,
the
wage theft.
Well, see,
We've
the one thing
learned
that
a lot
bothers me about
that.
this is because it is inhuman, because you're at risk for everything. The boss decides not to pay you. You can't report him or go to the police. What are you going to do? You just have to take it. No matter what it is, housing, anything they can do.
You get hurt.
You get hurt.
Yes.
You're actually, your child gets sick. You can't take him to a doctor. We talked about that before, or to the hospital. So what do you do if you don't have people who are willing to put themselves on the line to help? We need a lot of people to stand up and just say, hey, we've got to pull together and do this. This is time. It's way
Yeah.
past time.
Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I'm really hoping that in the 15 minutes that left, we can talk a bit about what some of the things are we can do. I mean, as I'm sitting here talking with Daniela and Ernesto, I'm realizing they have really put themselves at quite a bit of risk to be in the status that they're in, and yet to talk about it, to come forward, and it kind of, in a way, makes the rest of us, I don't know, it makes me feel a little ashamed that here I sit in my safe, comfortable house and not really at risk of anything else, and yet there are so many things to be done, and so many things to be done from a humanitarian approach. So we did kind of look at what some of those things are that some of us could do. We're not going to solve the problem, but maybe we can keep some people from being caught up in the deportation net. Maybe there are some things we can do to help people in their where they are right now, and put political pressure on whomever to try to get this new DREAM Act passed or reform our immigration system. So what are some of the things that you could call on us to do?
I believe that currently in the situation that we're in, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, it brings a lot of depression for a lot of people. So a lot of people lose hope. So I believe it's really important for people who have something that we don't have, which is the right to vote. So right now we urge people to vote. Yes, your vote counts. If you don't think it counts, you should watch the news and see what just happened in Alabama. So it is important for people to vote right now, because we cannot vote. Right now, what we urge is people to call your senator, call Buddy Carter, and tell him that you're in support of the DREAM Act at 3440, which will help us a lot. And not only that, but also just be open-minded. Don't just believe what you hear. Be open-minded and hear like the story from someone, from a dreamer. Be open-minded and also be there for support, because you don't know how much support we need.
Okay. Well, I mean, I really appreciate hearing that. And I hope those in our listening audience will think about the different things they can do. I certainly, from my perspective, I see one, I call it a no-risk, very simple thing that we can all do. When I hear the term illegal alien, I cringe. I personally feel that no human is illegal. We are all legal beings. Many of us get caught up in illegal acts. We may commit an illegal act, but that doesn't make us as individuals illegal. And to the extent that people can stop saying illegal alien, illegal immigrant, I know it's not going to change anything, but at least maybe it'll change the mindset and help people think differently about what's going on. But that's certainly many other things that we can do.
Yes, we try to not to use the word illegal. We try to use the word undocumented.
Right.
We try not to use illegal or alien because obviously I'm not green, so I'm not an alien. So we do try to use the term undocumented.
And I can attest that she is very human and she is not illegal either.
And another thing that you can do, I think, is educate yourselves. There's
Yes.
many issues in the immigrant community, and there was a big issue here with students and tuition rates. DACA students being charged out-of-state tuition when they pay state taxes, they pay federal taxes, they pay sales taxes, but Georgia just believes, the Board of Regents just believes that they should pay out-of-state tuition.
And
So-
been here for years.
And been here for years.
Yeah.
So there's many issues, local, state, national level, that immigrants face, and just educating yourself. Many ignorant things that you thought you just change your
Well, you
blows your
mentioned-
mind. Yeah, it blows your mind.
You mentioned something because a lot of
Yeah.
the right-wing people, the conservative bent, always say things like, well, we're paying taxes, we're paying for their health care, we're paying for their education, we're providing all these things for them, and they're not doing anything. And so they're like sponges just taking over. I read the other day that the taxes that's paid by undocumented immigrants in this country is billions of dollars every year. And the fact that you can't get medical care, we
Yes.
don't pay for it, you don't have it.
That's right.
Contributions to Social Security.
That's right.
Yes.
Being taken out, but you'll never
Right.
see any.
Yeah, you'll never see any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes into a system that's already bankrupt, so they say.
So they say, but we
yeah.
know it's not. So the other thing, before we go off the air, that I do want to mention is the whole sanctuary movement. And sanctuary is a term, it's as old as, I mean, it goes back to medieval times, if not even before that. People providing safe places for people at risk. And in this country, there were three particular sanctuary movements that I think are important to talk about. And the first one was the Civil War. When slaves were escaping from the South, they didn't just get on the Underground Railroad. It wasn't a track somewhere. You got on, you got off in the North, you got off in Canada. No, it was a trek, and there were safe places along the way where people were able to stay. These were homes, these were churches, these were whatever. And it was a very intricate, elaborate system of codes and other kinds of ways that people would be able to identify a safe place. And one of those was people hung quilts on their balconies, and those quilts had certain patterns in them, certain things that identified a place as a safe place. And certainly people took risks by doing that, but they were willing to step out and take risks because they understood that slavery was wrong. The next sanctuary movement, large sanctuary movement, came out in the 1980s, and this was when there was a lot of turmoil in Central America, mostly helped along by the United States and the assassins that we were training at the School of Americas right here in Georgia. And in particular, we were looking at El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, where people were fleeing the political turmoil, were fleeing sure death, and the U.S. closed its doors. So people put themselves at risk to get these refugees seeking asylum over the border. And then again, it was a system of sanctuaries, safe places, and volunteer transports. I had friends who transported people from churches and other safe places in Syracuse, New York, to and across the Canadian border. And it's amazing to listen to their stories, knowing full well how much at risk they put themselves, but yet they were willing to do it because it was the right thing to do. And here we are again today, I feel, where we need to bring this sanctuary movement back. It needs to come alive.
Well, here we don't have to go up to Canada, though, and under an underground railroad, but we need to set up support stations, whether it's houses, churches, counties, cities, sanctuary churches. I understand that the Unitarian Universalist Alliance or Association,
the UUA,
has encouraged
member congregations to become sanctuary churches.
Cities. There are counties that can become sanctuary. But certainly we people have to understand sanctuary should be given to anyone in need, no matter who it is or where it is. If you're in need, we need to be there to help. And the sanctuary idea is phenomenal in the fact that they were pushing for it, and even in states, trying to push for sanctuary states.
We actually have 6 states that can call themselves sanctuary states: California, Colorado, Illinois, New Mexico, Oregon, and Vermont. And 3 or 4 handfuls of cities. And in Georgia, we actually have 1 city that is a sanctuary city.
Right. It's in around Atlanta.
Right. Clarkson, Georgia.
Clarkson, Georgia. And the idea now, don't feel comfortable and safe just because it's a sanctuary city or a sanctuary place. You are still very much at risk. All that means is that the state will not commit time, money, or resources to assist ICE in any way.
That's right. The state, the city, the county. And in fact, if you think that these are illegal, it's illegal to not assist. The truth is, in the Constitution, there is the 10th Amendment, which says that the powers not attributed directly to the federal government belong in the hands of the states. And there is nothing in the Constitution that requires states, municipalities, to cooperate with federal laws. And in fact, during Prohibition time, New York City refused to cooperate with the feds to enforce alcohol prohibition. They just flat out said, no, we're not doing it. Now, of course, their motivations were probably less humanitarian, more about the money, and but nevertheless, they refused to do it. And so if any locality says, oh, we're not allowed to do that, we can't do that, no, they very much can do that, and that's another message that needs to get out.
Ernesto mentioned something too, though. There's always a way around these things, and you mentioned something about what are the bounty hunters?
Oh, the
so
bounty
they're
hunters.
privatizing.
In some states, yes, I've seen in the news that there's bounty hunters after illegal immigrants as well.
That is low.
So
That is frightening. That is quite frightening. And of course, we know we did a show on incarceration, and we talked about the privatization of prisons, and now the detention centers are being privatized. And in fact, we learned that the U.S. budget allocates a certain amount of money for beds in detention centers. It's called the quota, the detention quota. So you've got the money there, you may as well fill those beds.
In fact, those corporations don't make money unless they do fill those beds. So
that is true.
yeah, and they're out to make money, nothing else. They don't care about you or anyone else. They're just about the money.
Yeah.
And that's always dangerous when someone is just about the money.
Absolutely. So right now there are 800 churches around the country who have declared themselves sanctuaries. It sounded like a large number to me until Albert pointed out there were probably 600 churches in the city of Savannah alone. And then I realized, oh no, that's probably maybe 0.1% of all the churches in this country.
I think we tried to figure something out like that at one point in time.
Yeah,
but
we failed
there are. And the thing we want to do, we want to encourage churches, any community organization, any person to get in touch with Shuya, help any way you can, and to push your church to become a sanctuary church. Push the county or the city or whatever you want to, but
Right.
especially the churches and things, so you can build networks to help protect people when that time comes when they need protection.
Right, and give this organization, give Sue a platform to be able to spread the education, to be able to talk to people about knowing their rights. And what happens if you get stopped at a a border checkpoint, that you don't have to say anything, you don't have to show anything. This is not a country where papers are required, at least not yet.
I don't know about that. Papers, please.
Papers, please.
And it's all done through profiling in a big way, because I wouldn't be stopped. You would.
That's right.
And I think we're all invested in this somehow.
Absolutely.
There's farmers picking tomatoes that you're eating right now. There's
That's right.
illegal immigrants in every city, in every school, children, all kinds of ages. So we're all somehow directly affected by this. So it's definitely an issue that has to be dealt with.
That's right.
And it
these
has to be
things-
dealt with in a human way. A human way, not something that is dealt with like a corporation with profits and how much money are we making off of these
That's right.
people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Political expediency and profits. And as we head into an election year, what will the message be?
Also, there was someone who said the other day, just think about it for a minute, they will never get all the illegal immigrants out. They don't want them out. They're just playing games, making money,
That's
and
right.
increasing their power. Because if they were to do that, the agricultural business would collapse tomorrow morning, because half the fruits and things we get are picked already by immigrants, and you just can't replace that. And so everything would fall. Hotels would close. Those corporations you spoke of would have to get out and cut their own grass.
Yes.
Oh,
I mean, I'm
my.
being a little
Horrors,
facetious here, but I'm
horrors.
not trying to present that image.
Right.
But that is part of it,
Yeah, in
Yeah.
a way, it's like we know they need us, but they act like they don't, so they just want to take us for granted.
That's right. That is exactly it. So if we can get every church, every synagogue, every mosque, every group together and say, hey, let's do this thing. Let's start working together on this sanctuary idea and recognizing, putting our faith into real practice,
That's right. I mean, this is truly a humanitarian crisis. There's no question about it.
But that's not even talking about the refugees that are,
No, we
we're
haven't
bombing
even
their
touched
homes,
the refugees.
destroying their towns and villages, and
Yes.
because they have to leave and go somewhere else, we want to punish them again. And they're dying. It's just amazing that we can even refer to ourselves as human at
Yes,
times.
yes.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. This is really an important opportunity, and I so appreciate your willingness to come in and talk to us and share your experiences, share your situation. And I hope from this will come many more alliances with other organizations in Savannah
Yes.
for your organization,
Yeah,
and many
we-
opportunities to talk to people. And we'd all like to see this city, this beautiful, incredible city, become a sanctuary for people, regardless of their status, regardless of circumstances, because that's our humanity.
Just because they are human beings.
That's right. That's
We're
our
all
humanity.
in this together. We
and,
really are.
and here we are in this amazing season of theoretically peace and goodwill to men. And it would be nice if people could put their actions where their heads are and act out their beliefs.
So if anyone is interested in helping, give them a way to get in touch with you some way.
Yes, we actually have a Facebook page. It's Savannah Undocumented Youth Alliance. So if you ever have anything to say, I hope it's nice, something nice to say, or
Absolutely.
you need help with in any way, you can send us a private message. And then if we don't know how to help you, then at least we'll
Guide you
guide you
in
yeah.
the right direction. Yes.
Yes.
That's
And
great.
for many
And-
people, that's what they need.
Right. And if you
at that
happen to
time.
forget that name, you can always contact Voices of Resistance, and we will certainly direct you to the right place.
Yeah, this is a very important issue. This is not something to be taken lightly. And at this time of year, if any of you are feeling generous with your resources, this is a worthy group.
Or if anybody is feeling particularly depressed, please come forward, come to us, come talk to us. We want to offer hospitality, sanctuary, whatever we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.